Thank you so much. You're all welcome. I'd like to also respectfully welcome everyone who is here, members of the academia. I see that we have a number of you here. We also have various unions represented, various comrades. You're all welcome.
The resident representative of the Luxembourg Foundation, heavily represented by the West African contact person, the book reviewer, the eminent Professor of Political Science, Jibrin Ibrahim, the authors of this report. And on behalf of the Luxembourg Foundation, I warmly welcome us to this event. We are here today for the public presentation of the research report titled The Root Cause of Farmers' Headers Crisis in North Central Nigeria. And I'm sure this is something that is of concern to every Nigerian. The authors of the book, Plangshak, Musa, Suchi, I had to ask somebody for the correct pronunciation of these names. And Yaks, Musa, both of the Department of Sociology, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Jos, are here with us today. And of course, they would be delving deeper into what the research, how they went about the research and the outcome. This 108-page document looks at the root cause of farmers' headers crisis and makes recommendations for stakeholders to implement as a way of ending this crisis.
Welcome you. We are very pleased to be invited here to witness this occasion. First, on behalf of the research team, that's my colleague and I, we'd like to express our profound appreciation to the Rosenberg Foundation for graciously funding this empirical research on the root cause of farmers' headers crisis in North Central Nigeria. It's exactly 1 year ago when the fieldwork for this research was completed. The research was centered on North Central Nigeria, but not all the states were covered. 3 states were selected for the purpose of this study. Before the study, already there were issues surrounding the farmers' headers conflict in Nigeria. Our view is that conflict is a normal and functional aspect of human society, but when it assumes a violent dimension, it becomes worrisome. It becomes a social problem.
Received degrees in political science from Ibn Zaria, a doctorate in politics from the University of Bordeaux in France, and a research professor at the Institute of Federalism in Fribourg, Switzerland, among several other academic accomplishments. He has lectured, published, and consulted extensively on democratization and governance in Africa. He's a well-regarded leader in civil society as the chair of the West Africa Civil Society Forum. He was also a member of the Electoral Reform Committee established by President Musa and has observed elections in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Malawi, Togo, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Guinea for the Center for Democracy and Development, Economic Community of West African States, the Carter Center, and the Commonwealth. He has been the founding director of Global Rights in Nigeria. It's an international human rights NGO and has served in the leadership of several national and international advocacy and research networks of constitutional reform, electoral reform, and civil society strengthening. He's published many books, monographs, and articles in referred journals, and has consulted extensively with the UNDP, the DFID, and FOSTA, amongst many other agencies. He runs a weekly column, Deepening Democracy in the Daily Trust, and has sat on many editorial boards of learned journals. We are so honored and so glad to have him as the reviewer of this research study. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Professor Jibrin Ibrahim.
Thank you, Ina. Because you forgot to add the most important element in my CV, which is that I retired from everything 8 years ago. And I spend a lot of my life eating fish with John Oda and discussing lamentations on the Nigerian story. I find myself quite trapped. Be warned, you're not going to like what I will say about this research. I actually only read it last night. This morning I tried to get Angela to escape and she didn't answer my call. And I know I'll be in trouble if I don't come. So I said, well, I'll be brave and come. But I'll just plead that you make an effort to understand what I'm trying to say, much as you'll be angry and disgusted at what I will say. And I'm making this plea because I think it's a very important issue. This crisis is the most important crisis in the history of this country. And if there's one thing that could easily break up this country, it is the crisis we're talking about. So it does deserve some reflection in a very difficult context. The difficult context is that this is a crisis Nigerians have made up their minds on long ago. They know what the facts are. They have taken their positions. And all that's happening in this country is confirmation of bias. You've taken your position. You know your position is correct. And you want others to confirm your position. And if you don't, you're an enemy, you're on the other side, and you're the problem. So that's the issue. The topic is the root cause of farmers' herders' crisis in North Central Nigeria. It's an astonishing topic. The root cause. How can you say the root cause for a crisis that has been on under 3 jurisdictions? Pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial. We're talking of a crisis that has spanned centuries, and you think there is a root cause. My God. I don't know how that emerged as a topic, whether it's in the terms of reference given the researchers, or whether it's the conceptualization of the researchers. My first point about the report is that the question of the root cause comes up twice, in the title and in the concluding paragraph, where the root cause is collapsed, which is basically Fulani jihad and takeover of land in the Middle Belt. So it appears in the topic and in the very last paragraph. Throughout the research itself, these 2 competent researchers show there are so many causes under different categories, under different historical epochs, under different motivations. So that's the content of the research report. So Angela, you have to explain this topic. Just strikes me as incredible. And I chastise the researchers for accepting it as a topic, knowing fully well from their work that there's a problem with with that title, and that therefore they had a responsibility to change it. The most important analytical component of this research, and here the authors do it very competently, is to make the point about the history and sociology of this crisis. And it's in two phases they explain. For generations upon generations, there has been a good symbiotic relationship between farmers and herders in the area of research. And the symbiosis is based on the offer by farming communities of land to herders to use, and in return, they get manure. The outcome of that symbiotic relationship is good, cheap supply of meat. Phase one. Phase two, that symbiotic relationship broke down. The orgy of killings happened. And they point out, and I completely agree with them, saying that in this research zone, since 2001, we are talking about over 60,000 people killed, with all the other associated destruction. And it's in this context, because this crisis is in deep Nigeria, because it's in rural Nigeria, because it's in the hinterland, that it poses such a threat. So that's the sociology of the crisis. And I don't think anybody can contest this analysis, this outline of the sociology of the crisis that the authors offer to us. What I contest, and what I think needs to be reviewed, is the politics of the crisis. Essentially, the research report is in two parts. The first part does an extensive and competent review of the literature. And the second part is about the field work based on interviews conducted in 3 states. When you look at the politics elements, essentially, a lot of what the authors talk about is what I'll call narratives of prejudice. It's all about the stories we read in the media every day, and that we're so familiar with. Nigeria, presided over by Fulani, under his stewardship, the Fulanis are massively armed. They're terrorizing communities in North Central. Their acts and atrocities are condoned by the state, and they are comforted in the fact that because they have political support, they can continue roving around with arms and doing what they want to do in North Central Nigeria. Who are these Fulanis? We are told that they are from Futa Jalon. On page 1, Futa Jalon is described as a semi-arid zone in the Sahel. And this is where you see the association of prejudice. How can somebody from Plateau State, say Futa Jalon, semi-arid Sahel, the only place similar and almost identical with Plateau in West Africa is Futa Jalon. The watershed has high rainfall, grassland, lands, and is the source of most of the rivers that flow in West Africa. But they set your mind from page 1. These are people from this Sahel semi-arid coming here to. No, you can't say that. You can't say what has no basis, in this case, in geographical reality. You have to check your facts before you write them down. I will say. This idea of they come from somewhere else. One of the communities they are looking at is Tiv communities. Read the history of the Tiv written by the Tiv themselves. They come from Southern Africa, through Central Africa, before coming to the Nigerian land area. When they came into the Nigerian land area, there were already Fulani pastoralists in that zone. But they are not the other, they are not outsiders. It's these people from the Sahel. Shall life is safe. I'm looking at people appearing very shocked and I'm getting very uncomfortable. I evoke the spirit of Rosa Lutton. The authors point out that there is a policy approach by government to impose and generalize what they call the Ruga grazing system. Is the Ruga grazing system a sociological category? The fact of the matter is that the Ruga grazing system is a system we've been talking about of pastoralism that has been going on for centuries. But of course, in the narrative that has emerged, it is now being redefined as a different system. And for good reason. For the past decade, there has been a livestock development strategy called the National Livestock Transformation Plan, NLTP. The NLTP sets out to transform livestock development, especially as it affects pastoralism. And its key element is to improve the breed. When you breed a Nigerian cow with a Frisian, the product will be too fat to walk 20 meters. So you have to keep it put. And since I'm slim, I shouldn't use the word fat. Anyway. Is that what people are looking for? Transform livestock production and stop this crisis. Then something happened to NLT. Under an Idoma Christian Minister of Agriculture, suddenly we saw this minister on NTA saying he's introducing cattle colonies. Cattle colonies? When the narrative out there is that the Fulani want to colonize the people and take their land, and the minister of the federal government, Middle Belter Christian Idoma, comes on NTA and says he wants cattle colony, there can only be one explanation. Buhari told him to say it and he said it. Right? Of course, Nigeria blew up. Mischief is now over. In 2017, I was asked by the World Bank to review Nigeria's system of animal production, in particular, the system of pastoralism. And therefore had access to official documents. So when these things were happening, I took the three policy documents in context. NLTP 2015-2016 version. The second, the cattle Fulani version. The third, the Ruga system version. Believe it or not, the three documents were identical except for the title. I want to know how many of you have actually read these documents. They are all identical. There is playing with words only in the title. What shocked me wasn't even the issue of manipulating minds with titles. It was the policy content. The strategic objective of NLTP is to settle 5% of pastoralists over a 10-year period. So 95% will continue. Who is screaming about the policy content of those policy documents? Nobody, because nobody has read them. Everybody is screaming at each other and above all killing each other over the title. Some people have to answer for these titles because of the damage it has done to this country. There is mischief, and that mischief will rotate between President Buhari and Adobe. Who was changing those titles and why? What was the objective? How come the content was not changing but the titles were not changing? When you do serious research, these are the things you look at. I didn't see any analysis of the NLTP in this research report. Our two authors are sociologists. And for the empirical part of their data, they chose a methodology based on key informant interviews. Focus on 3 states: Benue, Plateau, and Nasarawa. In each state, they choose 2 local governments. And the KII in each local government uses this purposeful selection of 12 people for the interviews. 1 will be a traditional ruler. 2nd will be a staff of the local government. The 3rd will be somebody from the Farmers Association. The 4th will be a member of the Hada community. The 5th will be 3 members of communities representing women, youth, and men groups. The next will be a member of the security. 1 will be representing the vigilante. Another will be representing civil society. And 2 will be representing religious groups. So there are 12 people interviewed in each local government. Take a look at these 12 people. Remove 1, the security. That will usually be the Nigerian police. That leaves 11. Religious groups, 1 Muslim, 1 Christian. Right? Other 1. It means on the side of 1 protagonist, the Fulani herders, you have a maximum of 2 people for the KII. On the side of the indigenous community, you have 9 people. So we are saying 2 parties are fighting. 1 party you are listening to 9 people, the other party you are listening to 2 people. It's called objectivity in social science, right? I think we should introduce methodologies we develop. Clearly, this is an issue that has been highly politicized and coalesced into 2 groups. So when you listen to 9 people from 1 group and 2 from the other group, you have your answer. I think you don't have to do it. This data that was generated by this research is data about perceptions of communities about the farmer-herder crisis. So it's not, okay, I get it tired. Good. It's not data about what the reality of this farmer-herder crisis is. It's data about what people think. It's about perception. Is that really the best methodology to understand the cause, the main cause of this crisis? I'm not going to talk about the content of the findings. I think it's extremely rich. And there is one thing that stands out very strikingly about their findings. And please let it be clear. I think this research was done very honestly, and you will see the honesty when it comes to the findings. There is a huge difference between what respondents say in Nasarawa State versus what respondents say in Benue and in Plateau. And you can clearly see community consensus on the analysis in Benue and Plateau, while the findings for Nasarawa, which are so dramatically different, more complex, broader, bringing in other issues that are not at all raised in Plateau and Benue, just show that this research was really conducted very credibly. What I question is the limitations of the methodology. Let me conclude. There's a different way you can approach such a study methodologically. You could have, for example, a set of respondents who are geographers. And they will tell you a lot about climate change, its impact on the Sahel, not just in Nigeria, but in the neighboring countries, and how the drying up of pasture has pushed pastoralists southward. You could have respondents who are demographers, and they will tell you about the dramatic increase in the population of the country over the past 40, 50 years, and how that population increase, the explosion has impacted on population dynamics, expanded farming, and restricted pasture. The 1965 policy on farmer had a conflict by the northern Nigerian government, developed a strategy, shift the pastoralists out of where areas that are farmed, move them to grazing reserves where you only have pastoralists, introduce program of crossbreeding. It will gradually be impossible for those animals to move and develop modern livestock production. These are the alternative policy options that were not looked at because the methodology was focused on listening to people in communities whose minds have already been made up. Apologies for my tone and language, but this is what I think.
I want to congratulate you and congratulate the actors themselves, and we say well done for the authors for what you have done, and Chairman, I want to say well done. Congratulations. I hereby present these officially for everyone to read and also to interact with you. Thank you very much.